Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Chris from AppSumo with the Remote Work Academy, and today I am joined with Natalie Ellis. And for those of you who don't know, let me give you a bit of background on Natalie. So at just 28 years old, Natalie is one of the creators and strategists behind BossBabe, the fastest growing online community of ambitious women. With a global online community over 2 million women, its mission is to inspire and support women to turn their dreams into a reality through building successful businesses. Natalie is a self-made success story specializing in social strategy to scale your business community growth and revenue rapidly and effectively. Through curated online courses, mentorship programs, in-person events, Natalie, along with Danielle, has built BossBabe into a multi-million-dollar business in a matter of just 2 years. That's crazy. Natalie has worked with academic institutions and government organizations to advise on young entrepreneurship, as well as winning over 11 national awards for her work in the space. Natalie's passion lies in empowering and supporting women to have the confidence and skills to build and run successful businesses. Based in Los Angeles, Natalie is also the voice behind the BossBabe podcast with BossBabe co-founder Danielle Canty, where the two share a behind-the-scenes look at building successful businesses and learning how to balance it all. Natalie, that's incredibly impressive and a lot of stuff that seems like it's on your plate. What is driving all of this for you?
So for me, I'm really passionate about helping women create financial freedom. And sorry if there's noise in the background, my husband's making smoothies or something.
Oh, we all got to make concessions these days for things like that.
Yeah. So I really want to help women create financial freedom. I grew up with not a lot of money at all. And I had quite a turbulent childhood, actually. And I know that things would have been different had my mum had financial freedom. So it really came down to that for me. And so I wanted to set out to create my own business, and it kind of evolved into my purpose, which at the time I just didn't realize. I thought I just wanted to create my own business, my own freedom. And then it kind of built into, I actually want to help other women do the same thing, because I do believe that if we can help other women build wealth, we can really change the world. And so everything I do really drives from that.
That's awesome. And so what is financial freedom for you? Or at least I imagine your definition of it has changed over time as you saw more and more success coming your way. But I guess from the early ages, like, what did that look like to you in its like most kind of original form? And then how did that change?
Yeah, so I think financial freedom is financial independence. So being able to pay your own expenses, it's being able to not have to rely on a job or anything to be able to have that financial security. So I really believe that we should be building wealth and thinking about how we are accumulating wealth, how we're investing our money, how we're making it work for us. So that times like this, when an economic crisis hits, we're not completely dependent on keeping our jobs or something like that, because we can never control the external environment. We can never control that. And I think being able to really take control of our own wealth is really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a number in mind as you were like starting down this journey where like, if I can only get to like $5,000, $10,000 a month, then I'll feel this way?
Yeah, for me, it was like, if I could just get to $4,000 a month, I can pay my expenses. I lived in the UK at the time, not LA, which is obviously different, but I was like, I can pay all my expenses. I've still got money left over, and I don't have to get a job working for anyone else. That's my number one goal. And I set out to want to create that right out of university. I actually turned down a graduate job, which would have paid me around $32,000, which at the time I was like, wow, this is amazing. But I turned it down. And so that was my goal. And although it seems like a small number, it took me a really long time to get to. It took me a couple of years out of university to really get that number consistently. And from there, continue to grow. And I remember saying, I want to be a millionaire before I'm 30. That was the big goal. And I said this at 20, and I thought 30 was so far away. And that was the goal, but I had no idea what that looked like. And to me, this $1 million number was so big and crazy. And I said it, but I didn't really know that I could get there or achieve it. But looking back, I just remember feeling like if I can make that amount of money per month and just be working for myself, that's the goal. That's the dream. It's to not have a boss.
Mm-hmm. And what was the feeling once you hit it? Did it feel like a monumentous moment, or did it kind of like, as you were getting closer to it, it kept kind of getting pushed further down the road?
No, it did. It felt monumentous. I felt really proud when I hit it. Mm-hmm. And then I started to do different things within my business and learn more about business. And I started to see revenue significantly increase. And then I experimented buying businesses, and very quickly, they say you hit a tipping point where you start to see things change. And very quickly, I started to see these numbers coming in revenue that I couldn't even get my head around. I remember screenshotting my bank account when we'd made $10,000 in a month, and it just kept growing. And every moment like that was still a moment of, wow, this is incredible. And I still get that too. I think we always have that, especially when we're kind of doing something that we're so incredibly passionate about. Like every single day is like, wow, I actually get paid for something that I love, and I'm not having to go to a job that I dislike. And so I still have that every day.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you were really able to enjoy the moments along the way and not just like always looking for the future, even though you're working harder than most people on the future, but also appreciating the present moment and actually like giving yourself the self-love to be like, hey, I did this. And that's something to be proud of, because $4,000 might not sound like a lot in the grand scheme if you could get a job paying that, but to actually self-create that, it's got to be such an empowering feeling.
Yeah, and it's a lot. And we see a lot of stuff online of entrepreneurs sharing, 10K month, 20K month, 100K month, $1 million month. And for an entrepreneur in the early stages, just thinking about, wow, six-figure salary created by myself seems so far away. It's important to recognize, like you're saying, that $4,000 is a lot of money to self-create through your own business. And we often don't give ourselves enough credit for that.
What was the business that originally generated that for you?
So I had a superfood supplement company. So
okay.
I was in university and I really, really wanted to have my own business, but I had no business idea at all. And I kept having, like, I have lots of ideas. I'm a very creative person. So I kept having all of these ideas come to me, but I did nothing with them. And then I'd see this business pop up, and like, for example, I had the idea of WAG. So like dog walking, like the Uber of dog walking, right? I'm sure I wasn't the only person having that idea. And then I saw it come out and I was like, damn it, that was my idea. And I think we all do this so often. And I kept doing this and I was like, okay, Natalie, enough's enough. Enough of this. This was my idea. Until you actually do something about it, that doesn't mean shit. And so I was in my last year of university and I was like, okay, the next idea that I have that actually has some kind of legs to it, I'm just going to go and do it. Because I kept hearing, action over everything. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go do it. And what's the worst that can happen? And so right out of university, I turned down this graduate job and I had no idea what I was going to do. I was pretty good at social media back then. And so I convinced a couple of my friends to let me do their social media, their Instagrams for them. But at the time, they couldn't really see the value in it because businesses weren't using Instagram that much. And so they were like, I'll pay you $30 a week. So I was like, fine, I'll just take a few of those on so I can just go and explore some idea and not have to take a job. And so I actually flew to LA. I'd flown to LA while I was still studying on a student visa for a couple of months. And one thing I noticed was people were putting powders in their smoothies, which is a very normal thing now. But in the UK, when I like 6 years ago, that wasn't a thing.
It was just all whole food products.
Yeah, it just wasn't a thing to put like maca and all this. Like people didn't know about this. And so I was like, that's the thing. I'm going to go and create superfood supplements. And I thought that I would be able to just have this idea, turn it into a supplement and start selling it. I thought it'd be a very quick process. And it actually took me over a year just to get to a point where I could sell it. So like development, like packaging, getting it approved, setting up an online website, like all of that took a very long time. And so in that year, I was doing social media for other people, anyone that would let me do it for them, even though they couldn't see the value in it. They slowly started to, and I was doing it for myself. And on Instagram, so about 6 years ago, I created an account for what would be this superfood product. And I grew it to around 35,000 followers before we'd even launched, which now sounds like not so many numbers. Back then,
it's similar to what we're talking about with the money. It's like,
exactly.
It doesn't sound like a lot, but to create that you were at zero. So to get 3,500.
Totally. When there weren't really that many accounts hitting the million mark, it was still very in its infancy. And I was like, wow, that was amazing to me. And so solidified the fact that I knew what I was doing with Instagram, which obviously came in handy later down the line. But we finally got to launch. I think it was about I'm going to say 16 to 18 months after having the idea, I got to a place where I could launch, and I launched it purely on Instagram. I had absolutely no marketing budget. All of my money had went into getting these superfoods manufactured. And when we launched, we were shipping to over 60 countries within just a couple of months. We got picked up by a retail store in the UK, the equivalent of Walgreens. It's owned by Walgreens in the UK, over 200 stores. And so overnight, the business really, really did just take off. And it looked like an overnight success, but obviously I'd been putting all that work in 14, 18 months prior, creating this Instagram account, creating an audience, getting people excited about what was coming. And so I did that for a while, but I just realized my passion was not in manufacturing food supplements. I was constantly having issues with our factories and shipping, and everything changed for me when I decided I couldn't keep it in stock, which sounds like a great problem to have. But when you're a cash flow heavy business like that, I wasn't even taking salary because all the money I was making, I was putting back into getting more products. I wasn't able to take money for myself, but we couldn't keep it in stock. So to the outside, everyone was like, wow, you're crushing it. But I was like, I just need to spend all this money getting more stock in. And so I decided to create a recipe book where people could download it online. And it was an e-product. Again, I wasn't in the coaching world. I wasn't seeing e-products done. I just thought this has to be easier than shipping out products. And so I did it for $10. And I remember making sales that day, probably made about $100 in sales. And I had no shipping to do. I had nothing to do. They clicked download and they got the product. And so I was like, with what I know on Instagram and this idea that people are buying information products, what's the next thing for me? And it kind of transpired into what you know as BossBabe, and doing like online education products and getting into the consulting coaching world. But back then I was doing completely different things to what I'm doing now.
Wow, so many questions come out of that. Let me try to piece some of them together. So one, for the people whose Instagram accounts you were initially going to for $30, were these like friends that had a business and you were doing business accounts, or just doing their, okay.
Yeah, they were starting online businesses, but they were used to doing everything through Facebook ads. And I was like, what if you can build an audience and have influence on Instagram? And they were like, that doesn't make sense. Why would anyone follow me on Instagram? And I was like, just let me like show you. And I started growing their accounts significantly, which ended up, I decided not to continue doing it. They wanted to pay me more. It was actually taking a ton of time and I wanted to focus this on my own business. Mm-hmm. But it worked, and they have some great Instagram accounts now because
And so what were some of the like high level things that you were doing or that you were recommending back then to people that they just didn't know about?
In terms of growing their accounts?
Yeah.
So it was a lot back then of manual engagement, which I still think has a place now. I call it the 3-2-1. So finding people who are your ideal clients, especially if you have a business. So a lot of them had coaching businesses where they knew their ideal clients and one client to them was worth $10,000, right? And so I would do the 3-2-1 where I would like 3 pictures, I would comment on 2, and I'd give them a follow. So 3-2-1. And I would go out there and find their absolute ideal clients and I would engage with them, and chances are they would follow them back. And then I would have them creating a lot of really consistent content. I would have them going through hashtags and liking pictures related to that hashtag, very niche hashtags, not health, fitness, business, really niche hashtags. I was having them post really consistently when they weren't prioritizing it. They thought posting once every 2 weeks was fine. I was having them show up every day. And share long form captions, share images of themselves that people aren't seeing in their emails, things like that. Because back then it was a whole different game to what it is now. And that really worked. That manual engagement really worked. And they would find they might get 10 followers in a day and 2 of them are actually interested in working with them, which is worth a lot of money.
Wow. And so again, that 3-2-1 is, you said it's 3 likes, 2 comments, 1 follow. Is that it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you still recommend that today? That's like a good way. And so how would that work? You find the specific clients you would like to work for, then you go to their page, like 3 of the pictures, comment on 2, and then follow them?
Yeah, I mean, so I only recommend it to specific people now because a lot of people come to me and ask, how can I grow on a bigger scale? And they have maybe physical products or products where it's not working one-to-one. But I recommend it as a marketing strategy if you are, say, a coach.
Yeah.
and you are trying to get your first 5 clients. How are you going to find them? Well, you go out and find these people that are exactly your ideal demo. You already have an amazing account set up where if they come and see your account, they're going to see that you have amazing content, you're posting consistently, you're worth following. And then you reach out and you engage with them and you continue to engage with them. You send them anything about your business that you think they'd find helpful. If you've got any freebies, PDFs, anything like that, and you build that relationship. Because I do think cold reach out still has a place. For anyone who's wanting to build on a larger scale and isn't interested in that kind of one-to-one, I think there are tons of other ways to grow. I'm a big fan of viral content, and I help a lot of people grow through viral content. So for an example, I figured this out for myself a couple of years ago when I was posting once a day on BossBabe, and we were doing well. Actually, probably about three years ago, I was posting once a day, and some of my posts would go viral. I'd kind of figured out what it took to go viral. And I would take a look at how many followers this post got me, because you can always check on the insights how many followers you get. So I would take a look, and on some of my posts, I'd be getting 4,000 followers from one Instagram post because it'd gone viral. And I was like, wait a minute, 4,000 followers? What if I did this 4 times a day? Is it really possible that I could be getting 16,000 followers a day? And I started doing it, and not every single post hit viral, but because I was doing it 4 times a day, I had a way more likely chance of getting viral multiple times a day. And it got to a point where we were growing, and still are. We've never actually dropped 120,000 followers a month completely organically through doing viral content. And so yes, we get it faster now because we have more followers, but I've helped people grow to 1,000 followers like that overnight through hitting viral content and having consistent content on there. So that's a big thing. Obviously, giveaways, getting shout outs, all of those things really, really helps. There's still a lot of ways that you can grow on Instagram.
Wow, that's wild. Yeah. So what is the secret to going viral that you kind of cracked the code back then?
So it definitely differs for every ideal client or ideal audience that you have in each person's demographic. But for us, what I realized was people like to share content that kind of sums up how they are feeling or sums up their identity without them having to do it themselves. And I would share, I'm a very sassy person, I would share very sassy, tongue-in-cheek quotes that generally no one is going to post an Instagram caption saying that, right? Like, it's very out there. But they felt it and they would share it because it was them saying it without having to say it. And so that was a really big thing. Yeah. And identity posts. So you see them go viral a lot when you share your star sign, your Enneagram, all that stuff. So the way I do it is I know how my audience want to be described or how they feel. I know what their identity is. And so an example would be a quote saying, "My soul's too lit to give a shit," right? Like, that's a way of them bigging themselves up and putting their identity out there as a very soulful, badass, confident person. They're probably not going to just say that themselves, right? And so I put that in. I put a lot of quotes around independence. They get to share their identity, they get to share how they're feeling. And so it's finding out that kind of works across the board, but it's finding out what your audience want to share and how your audience identify, and then bottling that and putting it out there. And I do think as well, if it has that quick response factor, then it really helps. So I don't like when I see quotes where they're written in cursive and there's all these colors flying about and you have to stop, squint to even read and see what it is, or it's so long that you have to stop, take a breath and finish reading. I don't like that. It doesn't go viral. It's way too fancy, and a lot of people want to kind of stick with their brand aesthetic, whereas we do pin quotes, but they our audience are very used to those now, but we also do white backgrounds. White background, people are conditioned to engage with quotes, with memes, with videos that are set up in that style. It's kind of the Twitter meme style. And so if that works, why reinvent the wheel? Why change it? That works right now. And if if you create content that someone has an instant reaction to, they're conditioned to already like it, to already engage with it, but it's your words, your branding, then you're going to get there even faster too. So there's lots of different things that go into creating viral, but I really recommend, if anyone's listening and they want like a grounded way of doing this, I know all of this can sound like, okay, Natalie, that's great, but how do I do it? I really recommend going and finding, say, 10 accounts who have a good following and have the kind of following, the audience that you want to attract, that will be great for you, your business, and go through and see what kind of content goes viral on their account. And so what that will look like, say you're scrolling through their feed and you're seeing 10,000 likes, 10,000 likes, 10,000 likes, 100,000 likes. Holy shit, this went viral. Okay, screenshot, put it into a folder. Do this for 10 accounts. So get a ton of content and then share that content, like reposting it, and see what goes viral on your account. And then you'll start to get an inclination as to what really works.
Wow. That's such a smart strategy. And it sounds so obvious where it comes from, like very similar to what copywriters do is when they read a blog post or they see a headline they really like and they just have their swipe file. But I've never really heard that applied to Instagram, and it makes perfect sense. And it goes to, we had James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, on a couple weeks ago. And he was saying like the best way to build habits is to make your habits identity based, where it's not like, I guess if you're trying to quit smoking is the example he uses, and someone says, hey, do you want a cigarette? You don't say like, no, I'm trying to quit. You say like, no, I'm not a smoker. You change your identity. And it seems like this kind of goes to that same thing. It's like you want to be touching people on the identity level, because that's really where you can like foster this, either whether it's behavior change or just getting them to engage more with your content.
I love that so much. Yeah, it's exactly like that.
So I have a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur, in the way he ended up selling a book to Penguin and got like a $200,000 advance solely based on his Instagram account. And that's where I first kind of like, for me, this is probably 5 years ago. And that's where I saw like the magic and the power of Instagram. And the way he did it was doing something very similar to this, where he just posted like quotes in the entrepreneur space with a little of that kind of like kick-ass attitude, and would do that like 4 times a day, and grew his account to 200,000, and then got a book deal, never having written a book before, to one of the major publishers. And it's like, how is this possible? And for about 2 weeks, I did the same thing and grew my account to 2,000. And I was just like, this is so silly, but it's crazy how effective that can be.
It's super effective and it's really simple. But the reason that people don't do it is because 4 times a day, that's a lot of content. And that consistency piece, a lot of people can't keep it up. I have an Instagram growth course, and it's like one of the early modules, I literally put them into a challenge where they have to show up every single day and come in and tick a box and show me that they're showing up. Because I'm like, I can teach you, I can sit here and talk for hours, and you'll be like, oh, I've heard that before. Okay, give me something else. And I'm like, well, show me your account. Well, it looks like you posted last 3 days ago. Well, I've been busy and it wasn't working. No, consistency wins. It's showing up when you don't feel like showing up. If I look at how many posts I've done on BossBabe, in fact, I should look, I'm pretty sure it's over 6,000, which is a lot of content. And in the beginning, you know, I'm actually going to look so I don't just say the wrong number. Yeah, 6,500. And it's in the beginning when no one is clapping for you and no one is liking your post, it's continuing to show up. And that's where a lot of people fall off. Okay, give me something else. This isn't working quick enough. Show me another way. And actually, there isn't just yes, there's ways to just buy followers and get shout outs and build it overnight. But when you're thinking about your online strategy, there's your content strategy and there's your growth strategy. And I see this issue a lot where people will not have their content strategy dialed in. So they'll go into growth. They'll be pushing their follower accounts up and up from doing all these different things, shout outs, etc. So they go up, but their follower accounts just drop because their content strategy isn't dialed in. I call it a follower roller coaster. You go up, you drop again. So you do another shout out to go up and you drop again. Whereas if you spend time dialing in your content strategy, get very consistent, do the things that you know your ideal client want to see, then you go and do growth hacking, growth strategy. Then as your account grows, you're still doing content, and then that's how you get that consistent. Maybe it's a little bit slower, but it's consistent. And if you have 10,000 followers, people who are your ideal clients, who are showing up consistently, you can generate a lot of money from that account.
So to bucket those two, it sounds like what you're saying is if you're like a freelancer, consultant, coach, you can kind of do that 3-2-1 strategy. if you're like more of a scale business that relies on a lot of orders and things like that, whether it's a physical product or a digital product or something like that, then you can do this kind of like the identity based quotes and things like that, that type of Instagram marketing.
I think even coaches can do that too. And I think coaches can do giveaways. They can pair with brands. Say they're a health coach, they could pair with tons of health brands and do some giveaways and loops and grow that way. Direct outreach, if they're really out there to make sales, I think really, really helps. But I think as a coach, it would be very easy to build your following to say 10,000 from scratch through doing those things, through doing the giveaways, through showing up consistently, without getting big shout outs, with interacting with people. I think that would be a really quick, well, it is a really quick growth, and I see it a lot.
So one of the things I think I found can really hold people back, and I find you to be a very like emotionally in tune person, is as you're getting started, how do you avoid, or how do you deal with the feeling of like, well, I only have 100 followers and they're all my friends and family, and if I start just like posting a bunch of quotes, like it's going to make me feel really weird. And like, how do people deal with that? How do you recommend they kind of like reconcile those two?
I mean, it all starts with that decision to be okay not being liked, to be okay being made fun of. And that happened to me. So I remember when I first started growing my account way back when, my friends at university were like, what are you doing? Why are you posting that? It's so weird. Why are you sharing what you're reading? Like, does anyone really care? And I had a blog and I was sharing blog posts, and at the time, no one got it. But now they're asking me for advice. And so it's always interesting to keep in your mind where you're going. And I know this is easier said than done, but you really need to remember that if these people are not willing to support you on this journey, they're really not your friends. If they're only here to see you post what they deem as socially acceptable, aka it doesn't challenge their comfort zone, then do you really want those people as friends? So you're going to be surprised in a couple of ways. You're going to be pleasantly surprised that actually a lot of people just don't give a shit. They're seeing you post, they're like, you do you, I like that, you go for it. Like they're going to engage, they're going to say, oh, I see you, like I love that. And they'll support you. And you thought that they would care a lot more than they do. And there's going to be a camp of people who does she think she is? Oh, that was a bit much for me. You're challenging their comfort zone, and there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with their comfort zone. And there is nothing saying that these people have to care about what you're doing. There's nothing saying these people have to support you. Just because they've supported you up until this point doesn't mean you get to expect they support you past where you are right now. Because if you're growing and you're kind of up leveling, not everyone's going to come with you, and that's okay. And we need to let go of the judgment that they have to come with us, they have to support. And you'll get to a point where your audience is more so, your ideal clients than it is your grandma and granddad. You'll get to that point, and when you get to that point, you'll start to see why you're doing it. But in the beginning, there has to just be a whole lot of, I don't give a shit, and I'm going to do this anyway, and I know why I'm doing this, and I know what I'm going towards.
Yeah. So you tip the balance, and then that's when you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of that target, that tipping point that you're looking for, is kind of offsetting it with people who enjoy what you're doing versus people who might have an issue with it.
Yeah. And you can, introduce yourself again to your audience and say, this is what I'm going to start sharing. This is what I'm passionate about. This is why. And so it's not just overnight you go from being the person that posts on Instagram once a year to being Fitspo and meal prepping every single day. Like, introduce that and let them know, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is why I'm doing it. I would love your support. Enroll them. And people love that. People love to be part of journeys, and they love to see how you're going with things.
Would you ever recommend somebody starts like a separate Instagram for that business? Or do you think it's a good idea to have it be like your personal and kind of have those two interrelated?
If it's totally not related to your personal brand, then yeah, you can start a different account. But if it is related to your personal brand, I would recommend just having the one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Going back to your kind of early days, you said you were growing your Instagram account for this superfood company, but it took about 16 to 18 months to actually launch it. How were you thinking about all of that? Like, it seems like you must have had a lot of confidence that this was going to pay off, doing that kind of long-term build up. Like, what was that emotional roller coaster like for you? Were you just so dead set thinking it was going to be the success that you wanted it to be, that you were able to kind of ride that out for a year and a half?
It was definitely probably the hardest period of my life. It wasn't easy, and I was really struggling financially. My family had seen me just get this degree and turn down a job and go and do nothing with it. And so there was definitely judgment there. There was judgment from my friends. I actually lost a lot of my friends because they thought that I was just throwing my life away, which is great now because I get to see who's my friends and who's not my friend. But that part was really, really hard. And I had no idea that it was going to work, but I had no backup plan. So it was kind of a case of, I knew if I kept this backup plan, I knew if I had a full-time job and I was doing this on the side, I wasn't really going all in. I wasn't trusting myself. I wasn't giving myself a chance to succeed. And I knew that, like, you read all of these success stories, right? I've read every autobiography there is, and I would study, well, how did they get there? And they really do talk about, you need to go all in, you need to have that belief in yourself, and you need to do the work. And I kept looking at this and thinking, okay, I'm just going to try it. I'm going to try it this once. And if it doesn't work, okay, but at least I give it a shot. And at least I can say I went all in with it. And there was a lot of days where I just thought it wasn't going to work, where things were like there was constant sending back and forth with the factory and getting my product disapproved. And I remember just feeling like, will I ever get there? Will this ever work? And it was hard. And the thing that just kept me going was, I knew that I was capable of creating something, of doing something with my life, of helping people. And I just had to keep believing that and keep pushing and just give myself a fair shot. And if it had have all failed, I probably would have pivoted and done something else anyway. But that experience was so invaluable. And especially now, because I coach a lot of people who are doing this kind of thing. And it's not like I just woke up with 1 million followers, right? And was able to do all this. Like, I've been through wherever that person is, I've been there, and I can remember emotionally what that was like. And often they don't want to hear, do this Instagram hack, do this thing. They want to just get those mindset tools. They want to get those little things that are going to help them bring in clients that month so they can keep working on that stuff. So I'm definitely grateful for it, but it was not a fun journey.
Yeah. But definitely rewarding.
Yeah, it was rewarding. And I think entrepreneurship is, you'll probably relate to this too, but it is a roller coaster. And you can look on the outside and see, oh, multi-million-dollar business, millions of followers, team members, all of these glamorous things. But on the inside, the roller coaster is still real. It's up days, it's down days, it's, more money, more problems, more team, more problems. You have, like, you still have all the issues of entrepreneurship, but just different. It's always.
So you don't have all of the boxes checked and everything's perfect in your life now?
I just don't. No, surprisingly, I just don't. I have some great weeks and I have some awful weeks where I'm like, remind me again why I'm doing this, because entrepreneurship just isn't the easiest journey to go into at all. And I think probably most entrepreneurs would agree with that.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you've noticed that don't change, or maybe they just become like higher level problems that have stuck with you from the very beginning to now that you still deal with and have to work through?
So one of them, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs will relate to, is I'm a creative. And so I'm still very creative, which means I'm the best person to create content for the business. I'm, the email, like for email writing, social media, quotes, showing up on social. And on top of my normal CEO job, that's a lot of work, and delegating that out and teaching other people to do it's really hard because a lot of it is me. It's my personality, my personal brand put into this. And I spent years and years perfecting that and getting to know my audience inside out. And so finding the balance of being able to run and scale my business while also giving myself time to do the copy, to write the posts, that was really important for me. And I worked with a mentor a couple of years back who was like, you shouldn't be doing this anymore. Like, you actually really shouldn't be doing this. You need to let go of it. You need to be focusing on CEO tasks. And I took that advice, and our Instagram plummeted, our open rate plummeted. And I realized, wait, I'm taking advice from someone who is not where I want to go, who's not in my position, who, is doing things completely differently. And so one thing I realized was I need to be taking advice from people who've been where I'm going or in my shoes. And I realized that as a creative, I like doing that stuff and I'm good at doing that stuff. So I write my own role. So So that's definitely a thing. And I've just seen we've got an IGA client in here, which is amazing. So good. I have 14K followers and 10x my income. That's amazing.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know. What's your name? I can only see Fem Guide. I just seen that pop up. I was living it. Other problems. I mean, managing team. It does not come naturally.
It's got to get a lot harder too as you get bigger.
Yeah, I never had a role where I was managing people in the past. And that's a big thing. I've grown my team. I'm responsible for managing a lot of people, managing people's emotions, managing people's careers. Like, it's a lot. So that's definitely a challenge for me. It doesn't come naturally. So I'm always learning when it comes to that. And so there's so many. I could talk for days on all of my challenges because there's so many.
One of the ones I would love to hear a bit about, which I've heard you talk about in the past, is kind of how do you deal with relationships while you are an entrepreneur on your journey, and especially now where you might be in close quarters with your significant other and trying to balance all of that. Like, what has that been like you over the years, and how we recommend people deal with that, especially now if you're in close quarters, you're trying to work on your business and it can just be tight maybe.
Yeah, so actually I'm in super close quarters because I live with my husband. And my business partner and her husband, they actually immigrated to the US in February. We were like, yeah, you can come stay with us as you're getting yourself settled. And obviously COVID hit. So there was no escaping and no going anywhere. And so there's the four of us living together, which is great because we all take personal responsibility, which I think is the biggest thing. And we're very clear about boundaries and expectations, which I think is really, really important. And I remember when I met my husband in the beginning, like, speaking of relationships, I'm super ambitious and I work a lot. And that was quite hard to manage in relationship. Whereas when I met my husband, we both had this conversation around our expectations. And that was a game changer. So working hours, availability, how we spend time, when we spend time, all of that stuff, how that works. And I think that's really, really important. And especially if you are in close proximity with your partner, have that conversation. What time do you finish work? Do you cook together? Do you eat together? What do you do in the evenings? Do you work in the evenings? Do you spend time together? What's the expectation on a weekend? Because I think problems come from assuming. And so the less we can assume and the more that we can be really vocal, the better. So I think that's the first thing. When it comes to business partnerships, so I have what I call my life wife, Danielle, she's my business partner. What we found really, really important is just being respectful. No matter what, you're within a business, in a partnership, you're always going to disagree on some things and you're always going to have differing opinions. And it's really important that you feel safe in that relationship to bring your opinions to the table, because if you put things into the table and let them fester, you're going to build up resentment and you're not going to have a good relationship. And so it's bringing things to the table and respecting each other. So even if I completely disagree with what she's saying, I have to have respect for her perspective and her experience. And that's been a really big thing. So respect, boundaries, clear communication, and just letting go of assumptions. That's a big thing.
Is this a continual process that you two are working on as you're going through it, with as things come up, kind of setting those expectations for it? Or is it kind of you have that conversation, you set the rules for how, like you were saying, with when do we stop working? When do we spend time together? How did that adjust over time?
So we definitely got a lot of the foundational stuff dialed in, but I would say there's always a new challenge. This work's never really done, and situations change. One day you're having a good day, one day you're not having such a good day. And so we're continually realigning. And we just try and have it sounds crazy, but just structured meetings, 30 minutes a week to really check in and be totally honest. What's coming up for you? What's happening? What did I drop the ball on last week? What can I do better next week? What do you need from me next week? Just those really honest, open conversations, which has been a game changer for us. And I would say at every level, when you think you've cracked it, something else you have to address comes up. So
do you guys do that at the same time every week, or what's the structure of it?
Yeah, Sunday, 6 p.m. every single week.
Okay. Is this over dinner, over wine?
Before dinner, before wine. We do it. We bring up our finances too. We have a really proactive approach to those, discussing all of that. And so we normally just sit down and make it more formal and structured, because I feel like that creates a really safe container for you to just be really honest and open versus sitting over dinner. You might not be used to having those conversations. So we create specifically, draw the line in the sand, get up and continue. And we put it in the calendar, it's structured, and it works.
Yeah. You said 30 minutes?
30 minutes, yeah.
Okay. I like that. No, that makes sense. Like having it separated out, like this isn't while we're doing something else. This isn't while we're trying to just like spend quality time together. This is a meeting where the core focus is to work on these issues that either we've had or events we have coming up and how we're going to deal with those.
Totally. Yeah. It really helps.
So one of the things, you constantly hear about like finding your why, but I heard you say something interesting about like, you can have a business why and a personal why, and they're not necessarily the same thing. What are those whys for you, and how do you recommend people figure out those?
Yeah, I think they can be totally different. So my personal why is I want to build wealth for me and my future family. That's a big reason that I do this. And then my business why is helping other women do the same thing. And I think it's really important to have both, because very often we can take on our business as our own identity. And we're not our businesses, and you might be doing that for the rest of your life, but you also might not. And so having your personal why is really, really important, and it probably will lean in somehow to your business. It might not, which is also totally fine, but it probably will. And when the business is challenging you and becoming really hard, you go back to your personal why, and that keeps you going, keeps you pushing forward, and allows you to pivot. It allows you to not get stuck to having to do it this one way, which I think can cause a lot of issues in business, where you get really stuck in, this is the way I'm going to do it, this is the way it has to be, this is my why. There are lots of ways to get to that. So I think it's really important.
Yeah. And Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, he says, like, keep your identity small. And I think that kind of applies to what you're saying, where at least keeping them separated out, where you have your why, but it doesn't all have to be towards that same mission, because then if something happens to that one, you're very like, what are you left with? Versus if you have kind of this like higher level, personal, strategic why that kind of covers the scope of your life. And then these individual whys for the little projects, you're kind of diversifying your identity a bit.
I love that. I love the idea of having your own personal values as well, and using that as like a lens in which you run things through. Like, does this feel aligned with me? Well, let me run it through my values. Is it helping me achieve my personal values? If not, it's a no. That's a really big thing for me. I turn down pretty much every speaking podcast, because for me, time is everything, and I want time on my calendar, right? And so I run these through my whys, and it helps me get to that yes or no answer. Whereas if it really aligns with one of my whys, one of my values, which is having impact, creating impact, then it might be a yes. And so have your own values, and so you can run everything through, and you can actually then create a business that helps you get happiness and helps you, build happiness in a way that aligns with your values. Because very often we can allow our business to run our lives and allow our business to dictate how our lifestyle looks. We're like, I want to create a business for freedom. And then we take on all of the things that actually are the opposite of freedom. All of these coaching clients, or all of these interviews, all of these meetings. And you're like, wait, I thought I was meant to be doing this for the freedom piece. I'm actually creating the opposite of that. And you don't know you're doing that unless you're really clear on your values.
So yeah, you can create the things that you say you don't want, and then just end up building that back into your life.
Totally. And you're like, oh, my business sucks. It's all the things I didn't want. Well, guess whose fault that is? Yours.
So how do you take your, I guess you have your high level strategic why, and then embedded in that is like your personal values. And then how does that trickle down into your daily habits? I know you were saying how you kind of turn down certain things if they don't fit into that, but do you have like daily habits, routines, and things like that kind of tie into that?
Yeah, so when I'm doing my kind of why, my values, I do a vision of how I want to feel, how I want my life to look. And I really, really think about that in like a daily basis. And I create my day around that. So a lot of that is space. I love having time on my calendar. I love having space. It's working with people that inspire me. So I think about what that looks like. I love quiet mornings. One of my values is learning. And so I spend time every morning reading. That's a really big part of my routine. And so it's thinking about how you can translate your why and your values into a vision that you can implement daily, whether or not you've achieved your goals, because your values should be the same whether or not you've achieved your goals. And you should even if you're working, a 9 to 5 job and one of your values is to have freedom, okay, well, what are you doing daily that's creating freedom for yourself? Like, how are you, I don't like ever, I'll do this when. I think that's actually taking you off track. And so I'll do this now, how? Versus I'll have that when. I think about how you can create that in your daily routine.
So you mentioned you read a lot of autobiographies, and then part of your morning routine is reading. Do you have any books you find yourself like constantly recommending, or some of your favorites that you've gone back to over time?
I don't. I'm kind of the person that doesn't have that many favorites because it changes so often. But what I've really enjoyed lately, The Ride of a Lifetime, the CEO of Disney, his book on leadership is absolutely incredible. I really recommend that. Right now, I'm also reading Never Split the Difference, which is a book on negotiation. It's great. Yeah. Traction is a really, really good book for people who are already at the 7-figure mark in their business and want to scale in a certain way. What else do I have on my bookshelf? Rocket Fuel. I think Rocket Fuel is amazing if you're a visionary like me and you either have hired an integrator or your business partner is an integrator like mine is, how you can both work together. So it changes a lot. I read a lot, so it's always different, but I think those ones, they've really spoke to me lately, and I think Traction and Rocket Fuel are just must-haves for every entrepreneur.
We just had Chris Voss, the author of Never Split the Difference, on last week, and it was so fun. What are some of the things you've gotten out of that? Because that was one of my favorite books last year.
Oh, he's just amazing. It's just so I haven't tested them out in practice. I'm going to say that because he teaches you things in the book of like how to have conversations with people. And one of the things he teaches is when someone's speaking to you, you kind of repeat back to them the last 2 words they said. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Mirroring.
It sounds so awkward to go and do. And I can see how it would be really helpful, but I want to have a test negotiation first and implement the skills before I go into like a real negotiation and try and say these things and do it completely wrong. But the mirroring, I think, sounds really, really powerful. And also his calmness, his really calm approach to negotiations and situations, I think is really important. And the way he talks about creating that, I think it can be very easy to go into a negotiation feeling very anxious or nervous, and that really comes across. Anxiety is such kind of an emotion that other people can catch very easily and puts you both in not a great situation. So the more you can control your emotions, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, that emotional control is definitely super powerful and very hard to do when everything is so elevated. One of my favorite things in the book is he talks about the no-oriented questions, where instead of saying like, hey, would it be possible to do this? You say like, would it be impossible? And I guess this is actually how I ended up reaching out to your team. Was I used that in the email where I'm like, love Natalie, it would be so cool to bring her on. Like, would it be ridiculous to see if we could set up an interview? And luckily we were able to get this on, which is super cool. And that's all thanks to Chris Voss, I guess.
Yeah, it was great.
So what are some of the things that are on your plate now? Like, what are your biggest initiatives for 2020?
So on my plate right now, I'm creating a new course, which is awesome. I actually only have one course. We don't have a lot of courses and programs at BossBabe. So we have our membership, we have our Instagram course, and I'm actually creating a brand new course on launching. So how to launch your business really successfully online. So that's what's taken up a lot of my time. And then we're just spending a lot of time really growing our podcast, changing our blog. We're doing a rebrand right now of the blog of bossbabe.com. It's very much due a rebrand. And so all of those things. So really creative stuff, which feels really, really good. And I love listening to our audience. They've been asking me for the longest time, can you create something? Can you create a new course? Can you create a new program? And it's been a while. So I'm really, really excited for that. And I'm hoping it should be out by mid next month. Kat said, will it be suitable for people who have business? Yeah, so I think online launching kind of applies to all of us. You either are launching for the first time or you're relaunching over and over. And I keep seeing entrepreneurs feel like they've exhausted their audience or they're exhausted by their launches. And I know that doesn't need to be the case. I've been doing this for so long that I think I've cracked this launching code. So I'm excited to put that out there and make that accessible too. So that's a really big thing for me.
That's awesome. What are some of those just the high level things that you can do to reduce the stress of a launch without, I guess, compromising the success of it?
So one thing really is your playbook. So I think in business you should playbook everything, but it's creating a launch playbook. So when you've drafted templates, created templates, how can you reuse them? How can you assess at the end of your launch what worked when you've done socials, emails, all of this stuff? Like putting this together in a playbook so that you've got a rinse and repeat launch manual, I think is really, really powerful. And that's the one thing I see a lot of entrepreneurs not doing. Every time they come to launch, they're starting from scratch. Oh, this worked last time, so let me create it again. We have an Asana board. We click duplicate. We change up the different things depending on what we're launching, and then we go at it. We don't have to create a ton of new resources, and it's very much plug and play day to day of the launch, which is a game changer for us.
Mm. So you do it once and then you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You're just learning the lessons, baking them back in, and then every time it gets less and less stressful.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for hopping on this morning. This was super cool for me. I had a lot of fun. I think people learned a ton on here. And for everybody in the comments, I want to share with you. So Natalie and her team very generously are offering a free 90-minute training on how to scale to 6 figures and beyond. And I'm going to share the link for that right now. And also there is a giveaway for a full Instagram audit from Natalie if you give her and BossBabe a follow, which I am posting here as well, which you guys can check out. Natalie, what's the best way for people to keep following you and see what you're working on and get access to that course once it opens up?
Yeah, just my Instagram I'm Natalie at BossBabe.inc. You can sign up to our mailing list, bossbabe.com, but Instagram's where it's at. We put everything out there. And yeah, I would love to give someone an Instagram audit. So I'll hopefully see you on there, and feel free to DM me if you are on here and you've got questions as well.
Awesome. Natalie, thank you so very much for doing this. This was really cool. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your Corona time and joining us this morning. Thank you very much. And everyone on here, thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll be seeing you soon on the next one. And let's give Natalie a big round of applause because this was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. Take care. Be well. Bye-bye, everyone.